that you can see.
Yeah, I try to.
Let me see here. I'll stop my presentation.
Okay, and
yeah.
And then you will see everybody, I think.
Now I see. Ah, Fabrizio, Lucia.
yeah. Oh, Raquel.
Raquel.
Hi.
Hi.
Let's start.
Yes, great.
Okay. Welcome. Our class from the graduate program of medical science from Federal University of Santa Catarina. We are going to have a conversation with Dr. Peter Wolf. Many of you may be familiar with his long and prolific scientific career. Just wanted to say a few words about his many accomplishments before we start. Dr. Peter Wolf, born in Germany, graduated from Heidelberg University in 1963. He was professor at Berlin Free University, medical director of Epilepsy Centre Bethel, Bielefeld from 1986 to 2003, one of the most important epilepsy centers worldwide famous, and since 2003 living in Denmark. Working as a professor of neurology in Copenhagen and consultant at Danish Epilepsy Centre in Bielefeld. He was elected president of the International League Against Epilepsy when he developed several widespread activities around the world for professional education in epilepsy and received several distinctions. He, in addition to all his scientific career, is one of the humblest scholars I have ever met, and extremely well spoken, and it's an honor to have him here. So we are really privileged to have him here today as our visiting professor in our graduate program in medical science, and to get some advice on how to succeed in a scientific career, what a senior researcher must tell his students. So, thank you, Dr. Wolf. And my name is Mariana, and I'm a postdoc student, and I am going to conduct this interview. So, we have some questions here. First one is...
Well, Mariana, before we go to the questions, let me just express my gratitude for the invitation to participate in this round. It's very nice. I have looked forward to this for several weeks now. And it's, one part of my biography, which is very important, is that at a certain moment I became a visiting professor in Florianopolis, and have such good friends in Florianopolis. So this I consider a very important part of my life. And I'm happy that I continue to work with my friends in Florianopolis. And I hope soon to be able to come again and see you in person. But right now, I also have heard it's very, very cold in Florianopolis, whereas here in Denmark we have summer, the kind of summer we have in Denmark, which is not what you know in Brazil. You have something more intense, but still it's a nice summer, and I would like to come back to enjoy the Brazilian summer, of course, again. I hope next year it will be possible again. Okay, so we can go ahead. Mariana, I look forward to your guidance.
I will make some questions, but if there are another one, people can write the question in the chat, so I can ask Dr. Wolf. So, Dr. Wolf, you have a long experience, so we want to ask you, what advice you would give to a young scientist?
Sorry, somebody is calling me. This should not happen. Jeg har slet ikke tid for øjeblikket. Jeg lægger på igen.
Okay.
Sorry.
The question is, what advice would you give to a young scientist pursuing an international career?
Well, I mean, the first and very important thing, this sounds perhaps obvious as we are talking in English now, but really the first thing is to learn to speak fluent English, to be able to have discussions in this language. And whenever you write, if you want to reach an international audience, you have to write in English. This has not been easy for any of us. I am not a native English speaker, and most of the people around are not, but it's something you just have to do, otherwise you will never reach an international audience and get an international network. Well, the network is the next thing which I think is very important. If you want to have an international career, you need to build up a network of people in other countries, make friends in other countries. And there are several ways of doing this, of course. So today, the internet gives you many possibilities, but still it's ideal to have a physical contact, which you can have at summer schools. For example, the Latin American Summer School for Epilepsy is a wonderful occasion to make friends from other countries within Latin America, but also with faculty from other parts of the world. And there are many people whom I have met there for the first time and with whom I'm still in contact. But this is, of course, still restricted to Latin America. We have, for example, the Virtual Epilepsy Academy, the VIREPA. I'm not sure that this is so popular in Latin America, but actually it is a program, a distance teaching program of the International League Against Epilepsy, which takes place every year. There are various courses on EEG, on imaging, on genetics, and whatever. And this is a very good occasion because it's you work for several weeks together with a group, and you meet a series of tutors, and you have not a direct physical contact, we have a close contact, you have discussions over the net. And it has happened to me several times that at the summer school, I saw two persons meet. We know each other, we have been on VIREPA together, and I know them from the VIREPA. And this is a good way also to establish an international network. And there are, of course, international fellowships which you can apply for, which give you a possibility to work in an institution in another country, make friends there, become acquainted. And these are excellent steps to form an international career. So at a certain moment, you will perhaps become part of a research network, and then you are there. This is all what you need. As we are talking, Mariana, you have been visiting us at the Epilepsy Centre in Denmark, in Philadelphia, and it was a kind of self-organized thing, but we found some travel money, we found scholarship. It was not much money, but we could be organized. Yeah. And I think it was an important part for all of us, because you took an important role in the research project, which we then conducted together.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Raquel is somebody who would like to do this. I can see it in her face,
Yes. For sure.
Yeah.
The next one, Dr. Wolf. What is the number one mistake that young scientists make when starting their career?
No, I can tell you, Mariana, when I read your questions, this one was really the toughest one. and I've thought long about it, but I cannot find one typical mistake that everybody at the beginning makes. And when I think back to the mistakes I've made myself, they are perhaps typical for me, but not for other people. But I mean, the most important thing is that really when you want to go into an international career or a scientific career, you must prepare that you do make mistakes, and it's not bad. You know, you are young, nobody expects that you are perfect, but you are learning by doing. You know, and every time you do something, you learn something new, and then you are thereafter. So don't be afraid to try this. People are there, they won't eat you. You know, they are, as a rule, they are willing to help you, to welcome you, and to help you find your way.
Okay. What key elements are journal editors looking for when you get a paper?
Yeah, I think this is important to know, and perhaps the first aspect is this topic appropriate for our journal, because the journals have their traditions, they have their culture, and they have certain topics they choose and others they just not find appropriate. So this is the first appropriate to look at. And then when you look at the paper, you will try to find out if the authors have followed the journal guidelines, because all journals have guidelines, and you find these guidelines on the internet, and it's really worth your while to study these and to comply with them. So you don't submit anything which looks different from what the people expect. Follow the guidelines, make life easier for everybody, including the reviewers and the people who are there to rate your work. And then another aspect is that they will ask themselves, is this a topic which is interesting enough for our readership to read and to quote? Because this is a concern of journal editors. The journal editors have to take care of the impact factor. So they're always looking for papers which are likely to be quoted and to be read, which elevates the impact factor of the journal. So this is an important aspect. And then, of course, they will ask if really this work contributes something new, something which is worth knowing. This is, of course, tightly connected with the aspect of will people read it? Is it new? They will read it and they will quote it. I think these are the most important aspects here.
Okay. I don't know, Dr. Katja, do you remember, it's important to say that when people read your paper that you want to publish, it's important either to really read what the referees tell you and told you, because they can see things that we cannot see when we are writing. When we write, we think our articles and our papers are perfect. So all we have to respect when referees tell us that you have to correct something. So next one, Dr. Wolf. What tips can you give the authors to increase their chances of getting published? This is very important, and when you correct our articles, you always have some good tips to us.
Well, I think it's very helpful when you write a paper that you develop a hypothesis and that you write down, this is the hypothesis, or there may be 2 or 3 hypotheses. This is what we want to investigate. This is our hypothesis, which we want to prove or find out it is not true. It's proof or disproof. That gives a clarity to the paper which often is missing. So if I read a paper as a reviewer and see the paper as a clear hypothesis, I am happy. And if somebody just goes for a fishing trip, let us see what's out there. This is not so good. A clear hypothesis and a clear answer to the hypothesis is very important. And then it's important that your paper is well organized. In all journals, they have the same organization of a paper. You start with an introduction, which gives a short review of what is out there in the literature, what is not known. You formulate your hypothesis, then you explain your methods, you give the results, and you discuss them. And all this needs to be very clearly structured, and then it's easy to understand, easy to read, and also easy for the reviewer to deal with. So it happens when you're not experienced in writing that you write introduction, methods, results, a discussion, and the discussion is, I forgot to say this, there's all of this aspect here, I write it in here, don't do this. You go back to the methods, write into the methods what you forgot to say, and then everything is clear again. It makes a little bit of extra work, but it contributes to the clarity and to the transparency of the paper. And it's important also to avoid redundancy and to avoid repetitions. Don't repeat yourself. What you have said once, you say it well, and then it is there and refer to it later. Don't repeat in the discussion extensively what you already have said in the results. Clear structure increases the chance of getting published.
Okay. What do you consider, Dr. Wolf, the minimum standards for ensuring scientific integrity and reputation? Nowadays, this is super important.
It is important, and you may be aware that plagiarism is a very big issue these days, and there are even algorithms which check papers for possible plagiarism and journals use this, and you should never do this because you will be caught and then you are out. This is absolutely clear. What is a plagiarism? You need to be sure is when you are a beginner, you are perhaps not always sure that what you are doing is plagiarized because you just read something and think, oh, this is nice, I repeat it. No, you don't repeat it. Above all, you do not copy and paste from another work and put it into your own. You can do this, but then you put it into quotations mark and put a reference to see this is what X or Y said about this, and you have your reference that everything is clear, and then you relate to this. But don't put anything in your paper which you found somewhere else. This is the biggest mistake you can make. And also, you cannot freely quote from your own paper. So this is called auto-plagiarism. Even when you go back to, and this may be a challenge. You have found, you have expressed a certain thought and you think, I cannot express this better. You just repeat it in the next paper in the same way. You should not do this, If you, and it looks, of course, silly if you quote yourself, but you need to do it. You need always refer, this is taken from here, or it's taken from there. You have to avoid even the shadow of plagiarism. You have to be very careful about this. And this is fine, of course, because this is a continuation of research that people just steal from each other. And another thing, if you quote a paper, always read this paper. It often happens you find something, this was said very well, another author wrote this, you quote it from a third author. Don't do this. You always need to go back to the original work, to the original article, because the secondary source may have made mistakes, they may have misunderstood something, or they may have been interested in aspects of the other's work which are not interesting to you, but you may be interested in completely different aspects from this. At the moment when you read always read the original work. And this is something, which I, as a reviewer, am very attentive about. If I see somebody is quoting something and I know the original work and see it's a complete misquote, but he did not look into the paper and just quoted from the third one, and it's a misunderstanding, it's wrong, I reject the paper, immediately, because this is not what should be done. You have to be very clear. This is part of the work you have to do, to be clear, to be because the work you quote, you always have a critical attitude towards. Even a famous author, you will not just quote as it is, but is this right? What this author says? Perhaps I would have different opinion. You need to be critical, and to be critical, you need to know the original work. It may happen, very rarely, it may happen that you want to quote something which is just not accessible. There are things perhaps somewhere in a book which you cannot find, which has not been digitalized. But it's very important for you. This may happen exceptionally. Then you say, according to author A, author B said so and so. So you take a step back and say, this is not my own view of this, but somebody said this, and it's important, we can discuss it. That's a possibility. And another point about the scientific integrity, you will perhaps, when you do some research, have data which do not fit completely into your hypothesis, and this may be very disappointing for you, and you may sometimes be tempted to hairdress your data a little bit, or to embellish them a little bit. Never do this. It may be disappointing. You did not find what you wanted. Okay, you have to live with that. It's not nice, but you have accepted. And you have to be strict about your statistics. If something is not significant according to statistics, it's not a finding. It may be disappointing to you, but it's not a finding.
Okay. Dr.
This is often handled incorrectly, and that's that you need to avoid.
It's common to have so many copies in plagiarism now.
Sorry, I didn't understand you clearly. I didn't hear you clearly.
It's common. It's common to find copies on the articles now. It's common
to find copies.
Yeah, it's common. It's
plagiarism.
Plagiarism.
It's
yes,
common.
Of course
it's getting more common, or it's okay. It's like always.
There have been detected so many instances of plagiarism that people have become more alert to this. I think it was perhaps more common 15, 20 years ago, but now everybody is more alert, and people realize, even if they are tempted to do this, they know they will be found out. It's not good for them.
Okay.
This has happened, I don't know how it is in Brazil, but in Germany, the country where I come from, there have been several instances where politicians wrote theses, a doctoral thesis or PhD thesis, because it embellishes your CV. As a politician, I don't really need this, but it's always nice that you can call yourself Dr. so and so. And then, there are people who go into this, this thesis, it's full of plagiarism. and sometimes this is not so full of it, and perhaps there may be exaggerations, but there are several instances, especially in Germany, where ministers had to step back from their office because plagiarism had been detected in their thesis. And so
I thought it only happened in Brazil.
It
It's a
happens also in
surprise for
Brazil.
me. We have lost some politicians because of that too. Yes, many times, many instances. Yeah, here in Brazil too.
It seems not to happen so much in Denmark, perhaps because it's much more difficult to get a doctorate and a PhD in Denmark. There are more stricter rules, so it's not so easy for somebody just to sneak in and get a kind of a discount doctorate. But this is more easy, perhaps in Brazil and certainly in Germany. It's not so easy in Denmark. We haven't had such cases here. Denmark also is a small country where everybody knows everybody.
Dr. Wolf, can I ask a question?
Oh, sure, yeah, sure.
Hello, my name is Carlos Arteblades. It's really nice to meet you virtually. Dr. Wolf, what's the main problem for science in Denmark?
The problem for us is the big discussion at this moment is that politicians want to get more of a hold of science. That they want not medical science, but social science, and that politicians have taken motions to control what's happening in science and attack certain scientists. And this is and they defend themselves. They say, we have the right to utter ourselves, we have to utter our opinions. But of course, if a politician says something, it has much more weight than if somebody else does it. So this is a discussion we're having now, the independence of science. Science needs to be independent. And we feel in Denmark at this moment, there's a challenge to the integrity, the independence of science. And we have to be very careful about this. And perhaps it's something which is part of the post-democratic developments we are witnessing in many countries at this moment, that politicians try to overstep their limits and get an influence where they should keep out.
Yes, it's a very different main problem for you than for us here in Brazil. We have that problem too, for sure. But for us, I will say that the main problem is the cuts on funding that we are facing all these years. But we literally drop in this funding in Brazil. So now we are, for example, we enter in a phase where we even have the data to be published, but we can't afford the publications. So it's even more common now among PIs to write to the magazines and asking for not apply the APCs for get publishing. So that's really embarrassing for us, but we are doing that all the time. And my question now is, how do you see this situation for an emerging country of Brazil 10 years ago that was going really well in research, in his position in the world, in science, emerging literally as a reference for Latin America, and now we are facing this really bad moment for science in Brazil. So what's your opinion and even your experience as an editor for these situations for us? Thanks.
I think, Carlos, you made a very, very good and important point, and I know this problem very well because I am involved in research in Brazil, as you know, and we have had this problem together that we needed funding. this move to open publishing, where the journals request fees for publishing, is a problem we also have in our part of the world, and sometimes in the well-to-do universities, countries, etc. When you apply for funds for research, you also apply for publication fees, and these are usually accorded. I don't think you have this possibility very often in your country, but
absolutely no one, Professor, doesn't exist. Simply doesn't exist. The main grants now are equivalent like $15,000 for a whole project. So an APC of $3,000 is absolutely impossible. So,
yeah, I know. I don't know if correct what they say. If you get funding from CAPES or from FAPESP, there may be some publication costs part of the funds you get, but it's the exception, And we can only hope that this will change. I don't know if you have many semi-public sources of funding. We have foundations in many countries, for example, in the United Kingdom, in Germany. We have private and semi-public foundations which provide a lot of money for research, and their funds usually involve publication fees now. But we have been out in that, together with Katja and Mariana and people from other countries. We have been doing international research, and we also were there. Then we negotiated with the journal. We said, I mean, even if I was an important author, we downplayed this and said, this country, this research comes from Brazil, and so and then you get perhaps a discount, and then we scratch the money together. I'm not belittling the problem. I know it's much more of a problem in your country, in Brazil, and they only can hope that things in future will by and by improve. And of course, it's also a question of politics. And I don't see how things can develop in a better way. When I think of the next elections you will have next year, I'm horrified, because what choice will you have? And there is not very much hope that the conditions for research will improve.
And your last question, Professor. Thanks for your comments. Some journals has started to make a try. I will say that in another manner. Sorry, some magazines started to retribute, to pay for peer review to the referees. So, for example, you receive an article to make the peer review. You do the peer review, and then at the end they give you like a bonus for your work as a reviewer. And if you do a lot of this stuff, you can accumulate, for example, 50% of the APCs in a future paper that you will probably decide to submit to that magazine. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I haven't come across this, but actually it sounds good to me, because as a peer reviewer, you put a lot of work, you offer a lot of free time for nothing. The only incentive you get, for example, in Elsevier, you get one journal, which otherwise you would have to pay for, but nothing else. And it has not happened to me as a reviewer in the journals for whom I habitually review that this offer was made, but I think it's a good way to recompensate the reviewers, because the publishing houses, they make money on the researchers, big money, but they also make money on the reviewers, because we all provide voluntary work for nothing. And if we can get this kind of compensation, I would be happy to see it, and I would of course accept it, because it's,
good to know.
I mean, yeah, it means you get something something sensible for something you are doing. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think in the same way, Professor. Thanks a lot for your comments on my questions.
It's
really
I
nice
hope to meet you in person, Carlos, perhaps.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Dr. Wolf, another polemic question. Do you believe there is a barrier from non-American or non-European groups for publishing in high-ranked scientific journals, and how to overcome it?
Yeah, this is actually not such an easy question to answer, because I don't think we can generalize here. And I also do not think it has to do with the rank of the journal. There are probably journals which is it part of the culture, perhaps even subconsciously, that they treat people from not their own surroundings. This also applies to American journals. When you, as a European, submit there, you also stand up against prejudices. You know, you have, this is not only what you may have experienced in Brazil. I don't think there is a general barrier. There is, of course, a language barrier. And this is, it comes back to what I said in the beginning. Become as fluent and as perfect. And nobody can be perfect in a foreign language, but this is not what is expected. All the research is published in English, and only a little part of it comes from native English speakers. But there is a kind of a research English lingo which everybody can accept, and you need to become familiar with this. What I see as a reviewer really sometimes is somebody submits in a manuscript in a language which on the surface looks like English, but is really not good, you know. And then it's not likely to be accepted, you know. Even you can say this paper is good enough, but it needs to be corrected by somebody. We usually say by a native English speaker, but it could be somebody who just better in English. There are language services. You know, you can buy language editing. This is, people make money on this. There are quite a few such offices around, and they are not all of them are good. You know, it happened perhaps last year that I reviewed a paper from a group in Turkey, and the paper said in the acknowledgements they thanked a language service, a certain language service, and I wrote in my review, I can see from your paper that you employed a language service. This was money thrown out the window because it did not improve your manuscript at all. You would have fared better if you just had used your own language, as good as it is. But I know that Katja has several times used a language service which was good. And it was even not so expensive, but they had, this was a good result. So if you feel not happy with your English, you have perhaps somebody in your group, because you usually don't publish as a single author, you publish as a group, and somebody in your group is perhaps very good in English, and you ask this person, you take a critical look at the paper, and if you are still not happy, you may perhaps employ this language service. This is important because this is perhaps most of the barrier which you seem to experience sometimes. It's mostly a language barrier, and I can tell you, there are even journals where you have a bonus when your research comes from a developing country. For example, Acta Neurologica, they always like to accept papers from, let us say, Africa. And of course, they need to fulfill all the requirements for good research to be accepted. but there is certainly not a negative attitude. This is perhaps unusual, but at least in the past, epilepsy has had the same approach. I don't know if this still prevails because they have a new editorship, but there was a period where epilepsy also was in favor of accepting research from, let us say, Middle East, Africa, Asia. So you should not be so afraid for this. I think some of you may have had experience which let you feel a barrier, and but don't get paranoid about it. If you have good research, it will be accepted somewhere in a good journal, And if you have the impression that there is a journal which rejected your work because it came from Brazil, you will find another journal which has not this attitude. And it's not a question of the high-ranking journals. The high-ranking journals are not worse than others. Of course, many of the high-ranking journals are based in the United States, and in the United States, the Americans think always they are the best, with or without Trump. And then they look a little bit down on other people sometimes, but even there it's not a rule. You may encounter it, but don't be afraid, of a barrier. If you have good research, you will find a place to publish it. You will find a good place.
Okay. So we have 31 people on the chat. If someone would ask Dr. Wolf another question.
I would like to ask a question. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, Dr. Peter Wolf. I would like to ask, is it important to select a field of research early on, or can a researcher succeed in many areas in one determinate field, for example, neurology? Because there are so many interesting things, and I get so lost thinking about that I have to choose one specific field. So I would like your take on that, please.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I think there are several attitudes towards this. Sometimes you get into an institute or into a lab, and they have their research agenda, and you become part of it, and then somebody else gives you the topic to treat, and then you are going. But if you are not in such I have never been in such a situation, and I always followed the questions which came up. There is a question which is not known. I want to know. There is nothing around. So why don't I go ahead and investigate it myself together with others? This is a very good way of doing this. You see, this is a question. It's important. You want to have it solved. Go ahead and solve it yourself. So you have this primary impetus that you want to solve a problem. Because this is what research is about. You want to solve problems. You want to detect relations which are not known, to clarify causes, to clarify correlations or relations which are important to know, and then this is a good challenge for you. Then you follow, and if then you solve the question, then you will be happy. And you will feel you have made a contribution. This is what you want as a researcher. You want to make a contribution to the knowledge of all of us in a field. I don't know how helpful this is for. It's not exactly the answering your question, but it's what I would recommend. Follow your interests. Follow the challenges that come up. Here is something which needs to be known. We go ahead and investigate it.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Someone else? Dr. Katia, Eduardo.
Luis Gray.
Can you...
Go ahead, Luis Grelli, please, your question.
Luis Gray, your microphone is closed. You have to switch on your microphone, Luis. Yeah, there you are. No, the mic is missing. We can see. Yeah, now you are there.
Good morning. I would like to ask you a personal question. How do you feel being a consecrated researcher in the area of evidence-based medicine?
I'm not sure that I fully understood your question.
You are expert and you are living...
And it's about evidence-based?
Yeah.
No. No, I mean, all our research is a question of creating evidence. But I'm not sure that this is what you mean.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because in the era, it became less personal and more the evidence.
Yeah. Now I fully understand you. Yeah. You don't give opinions. You step back as a person. You do research. You create evidence. You have hypotheses. You prove them, disprove them. That's what I tried to explain earlier. You apply your statistics, and only what is significant counts. Everything else may be opinions, but they are not valid. You need evidence, right? Fully agree with you.
Madsen.
Good morning. I try to speak myself in English, but I'm not good fluent. My question is, there's thousands or hundreds of papers and research published every day. I want to ask you about if you think it's important to invest in systematic reviews in the days going on.
Yeah, it's again. I'm not sure if I exactly understood your question.
My question is: there is a lot of
papers. Yeah. How do you find what is important?
Yes, the importance of systematic reviews.
For systematic reviews, you have certain rules which you can follow. For research, you search in the PubMed, you search in other databases, which present you all research which is supposed to exist in this field, and then you go through it, and you have to find out what really refers to what you are looking. Usually there is a lot of things which you cannot use, so to reduce very much the database which you get perhaps titles of 3,000 papers, and then you make your reductions, and you end up with 200 which are really worth reading, which is still a lot, but then you have to do this, and still you will find some which are not really relevant. But at the beginning, you will take into consideration as much as possible, and there are these databases which provide you with this.
Thank you for speaking.
Someone else? More questions? No? Okay. So I believe we don't have any more questions. So we can finish here. So we want to thank you, Dr. Wolf, for sharing your experience here, your wisdom here, and it's a great honor to have you working with us and being with us at UFSC as a professor and as our guide to good papers and to good experience of life as Lassie, as a friend.
Thank you, Mariana, and I can tell you it was a pleasure for me to be with you. I hope I could approximately answer your questions. You never get everything right, but I hope I could answer them, most of them approximately, and you can use this. And then, as I said, I hope to meet you all in person as soon as possible. You know?
Okay, it's our desire. Okay, I see you next week, Dr. Katja, and I want to thank you, and a good weekend to all of us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. It was nice to see you. Huh? Yeah. Bye-bye.